We still don't know the entire parade of clowns, degenerates, and in-laws that Trump will have running this country, but one guy we know will have a major role is RFK Jr.
The idea that RFK Jr. would be put in charge of health and science in this country, what do you say to that?
It's dangerous.
Health and safety, whether regulations are really keeping up with the information, whether or not their food is safe, their water is safe, that is being co-opted by people who want to make a conspiracy out of everything.
I think progressives make a mistake when we just roll our eyes and just kind of throw everybody in the same crazy bucket when people ask tough questions. But you have voters who say, listen, all these experts have been telling me stuff that turned out not to be true.
If you're not familiar with him, it's probably because he ran for president and nobody cared. But we're familiar with him because he's done a whole mess of crazy stuff.
So the media has already taken a critical stance against RFK and his MAHA, Make America Healthy Again movement. But it's not stopping him. He's already got the ball rolling. It's quite exciting. I'll show you more about that in a minute, but I just want to take a look at some of the things that the media is saying about him.
Trump and RFK Jr.'s public health plan isn't just alarming, it would be a catastrophe. Let's talk about Kennedy, who told NBC News this week that he, quote, wouldn't take away anyone's vaccines. But do you believe him? And what concerns you the most about his involvement in the greater public health world?
Yeah, Alex, I think you have to look at a sum of his actions over the last decades. And I think it's entirely possible to honor what he said. I won't, quote, take away vaccines, but he absolutely can put people into positions of power, like at the Food and Drug Administration, all over the government, that could weaken the strength of vaccine recommendations. They just make a recommendation to the CDC director, to the FDA. These are just recommendations that then the people in political power choose not to or to sign off of. They can use that same political interference, Alex, to intervene in individual medical product decisions. Remember how broad the FDA is, including rolling back even some things that we're familiar with, like over-the-counter birth control, the access to over-the-counter Plan B.
So I've heard this question of birth control being taken away from women and not being available anymore. I heard Harris talking about it.
Project 2025 outlines a plan to limit access to contraception and for a nationwide abortion ban.
I've heard it mention girls who are freaking out, online, who are crying in their bedrooms, scared. There's an awful lot of fear mongering going on around that. And it all comes from Project 2025, which Trump has disowned. He's said outright he has nothing to do with it.
Some on the right, severe right, came up with this Project 25, and I don't even know. I mean, some of them I know who they are, but they're very, very conservative, just like you have. They're sort of the opposite of the radical left, okay? You have the radical left, and you have the radical right, and they come up with this, I don't know what the hell it is, it's Project 25. He's involved in Project, and then they read some of the things, and they are extreme. I mean, they're seriously extreme. But I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it. But what they do is misinformation and disinformation, and they keep saying, he's a threat to democracy. I'm saying, what the hell did I do for democracy? Last week I took a bullet for democracy.
He doesn't have any interest in it. But Harris continued to bring it up, and unfortunately, that the echoes of that have continued throughout the media. I swear the left and the mainstream media has talked more about Project 2025 than any Republican ever has. We've had Harris spreading the misinformation about Project 2025 and about the birth control and, scaring, emotionally manipulating their own voters and leaving them now in some of them extremely distressed.
They can use that same political interference, Alex, to intervene in individual medical product decisions, like over-the-counter birth control, the access to over-the-counter Plan B. They can also hollow out federal scientific agencies just by driving out experienced staff, Alex, and also taking away appropriation dollars, because now they've got a Republican Congress, essentially, a Senate and a House that they can try to work with to take away some of these resources.
I think it's just unnecessary to just add those little like, well, they could technically do this, they could do that. Like, they're not planning to do that. He's outlined what he wants to do, and the things he's talking about doing are extremely, extremely positive for America. He wants to tackle the obesity crisis. He wants to make food healthier. He wants to take the chemicals out of your food, especially the chemicals that have been outlawed, have been banned in Europe, but are still being put in food in America. So I do understand that it's important to question things, and it's important to not just blindly go into something, especially when it involves big change. So I understand people questioning these things and dissecting them, but the focus seems to be so much more on the negative. They don't want to talk about the positives and all of the potential amazing things that could come from the food and health industry in America being questioned. Someone having a good look at it and making some changes. There are some things here that he's trying to tackle that could be really, really amazing for Americans. It's such an exciting thing. I get the skepticism, but I also feel like there should be more room for acknowledging the state that America is in terms of health.
I believe if people want a vaccine, that they should be able to get it. I'm not anti-vaccine. What I say is that...
Well, people think you are.
Well, I know, but that's because I'm called that because it's a way of silencing me. But I have said for 17 years, I'm not anti-vaccine. I just want good science. I want people should be able to make informed choices. I am against vaccine mandates.
Why can't... I am too.
They do this in the media a lot. They try to lump everything in together. So if RFK mentions, I'm not too happy with the COVID vaccines, I think we could look at those. We should do some double-blind studies on them again and see what results we get, because there has been some links to detrimental things. What the media does is they take that and they just say, oh, RFK wants to get rid of vaccines, and the polio vaccine really helped us, and this vaccine really helped us. He wants to just get rid of them. What RFK is saying, let's do some more tests. And how they can find a problem with that, I don't know. But what's probably going to happen over the coming months is that the media will try to distract you from the meaningful message and the meaningful work that can be done. So what RFK is trying to do is to make America and Americans healthier again, to make your children healthier again. I hope the media is not overly successful in distracting for that amazing, wonderful goal that he has set out to do. So on that note, let's take a look at this video. This is what RFK has released on TikTok. He started advertising with a kind of information campaign, and it sets the tone for what's to come.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans or Australians or most any other comparable country. And it wasn't always that way. Until the early 1990s, our life expectancy was the same or better than other developed countries. Then suddenly, more and more Americans began suffering from chronic diseases, from obesity, cancer, diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and all kinds of autoimmune diseases. Our maternal mortality rate soared to the highest of any developed country on earth. Same with infant mortality. Like the frog in the slowly boiling water, we didn't really notice as we got sicker and sicker. We've grown now to accept chronic disease conditions as normal. But now, in 2024, we're finally waking up to this cataclysm, and we're asking ourselves, how in the world did this happen? Well, a big part of it is our diet. Restaurants that serve contaminated food are fined or shut down. But when it's the government that approves the poisons in our food, a few people get very, very rich, and the toxins end up in every supermarket aisle. Let me show you what I mean. Doritos, Cheez-Its, Captain Crunch, gummy bears. Everyone knows that these are junk foods, so maybe you wouldn't be too surprised to see that the ingredients include a lot of poisons, including a harmful yellow dye called tartrazine, or yellow dye number 5. What you may not know is that this dye was originally made out of the sludge that's left over when you turn coal into coke for blast furnaces. It's called coal tar, and I've actually sued many big industries for legacy contamination of coal tar all around the country because it's so toxic and it's so harmful to the environment and human beings. A century ago, it was just an obnoxious industrial byproduct that everybody was trying to figure out ways to get rid of. One of the ways that they did that was by paving roads. But then a British chemist figured out that the coal tar could be used to derive fabric dye. And if fabric dye, why not food? Food manufacturers began using it to cover up the discoloration of low-quality foods that they wanted to pass off on unsuspecting customers. They didn't know back then that this yellow dye, tartrazine, causes tumors, asthma, developmental delays, neurological damage, ADD, ADHD, hormone disruption, gene damage, anxiety, depression, intestinal injuries. Well, we know it now. We've known this for decades. That's why tartrazine is heavily restricted in other countries. In some countries, foods with tartrazine have a warning label that it may cause ADHD in children. Today, it's made from petroleum, not coal tar. Either way, it's crazy to add this to your kids' favorite foods. It doesn't even change the flavor. This yellow dye isn't just in junk food. It's in the foods that we consider healthy. It's in everyday kids' snacks like popcorn, mac and cheese, fruit snacks. It's in sports drinks like Gatorade and so-called vitamin water. It's even added to chicken broth, to corn, to pickles, to mustard, and to yogurt. And so, of course, our kids get sick. And we lovingly feed them chewable vitamins which have, surprise, tartrazine. And so the cycle continues until the coughs and asthma kick in, at which point you go to pick up some cough syrup. And yeah, you guessed it, tartrazine. I've been picking on tartrazine today, but that's just one of at least 100 chemical poisons that our health agencies allow into our children's food. I can make a video just like this to talk about Red 40, BHA, BHD, potassium bromate, chemical after chemical, and on and on and on. If just one of them can cause all of these problems, imagine what they're doing in combination. That has never been studied. If we took all of these chemicals out, our nation would get healthier immediately. We'd have fewer sick days. We'd have better focus. We'd have less anxiety. Our kids would learn more easily. We'd lose weight. We'd have more energy. We'd have fewer tumors and longer lives. It's not all dark. Over the past 16 years, the government has banned 8 chemical additives that cause cancer, genetic damage, asthma, and many of the other health conditions, as tartrazine does. And you know what's interesting? All 8 of those crucial steps forward in our kids' health were taken under President Trump. But the Democrats, who claim to be all about health care, have stood by watching other countries ban these poisons and make our kids sick, asthmatic, hyperactive, and depressed. They left them on every supermarket shelf in America. They even used your tax money to put them in your kids' school lunch. So their big food and their big ag donors probably gave them all that golden handshake and the big money hug. And their big pharma donors probably called them up and thanked them also, because now they're going to make billions selling Adderall, Prozac, and rescue inhalers. Enough is enough. President Trump and I are going to stop the mass poisoning of American children. Together, we're going to make America healthy again.
How can you overlook this? Like, when you choose to overlook this message, to talk about him being like a danger to the American people, I just think really he always summarizes things really, really eloquently and gets the message out there. We've got one last video that RFK has released, which is showing his superhero powers and reminding us of the message.
The only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
So, what are your thoughts on this?